Hello and welcome to this second edition of X's and O's Sports Talk. I'm your host, Ricky Paulson. Today I'm joined by Jay Lenander and our special guest, Andy Rickoff, who is the very first sports director of AM 1100 The Flag. It even says it on his shirt today. He's all ready to go. Andy, how you doing so far?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Ricky, for having me on. A lot of fun to come back to the college roots a little bit where I spent some time.
So just tell us how your day looks like. Are you rolling out of bed at 6 a.m., 11 in the morning? What's it look like being a sports director?
Well, a lot of that depends kind of on the season of what time of the year it is. For me, I do a lot of high school stuff. So obviously during the fall, it's a lot of football and volleyball. So I get in a little bit later and I stay a little bit later because I'm working nights and weekends for football and volleyball and doing games like that. And then when basketball rolls around, you're doing 3 to 4 either basketball or hockey games. So again, you're coming in more like 10 o'clock and getting things done for the day, making sure you have everything done for the games you're calling that week, and calling coaches, calling players, getting information from them, and then you're calling the games at night. So it's a lot of nights and weekends. But now that high school basketball is basically done and all the high school sports are done, now I do get in a little bit early. Now it's more like getting at 6 and get your news stories written up for the sports shows, and then figure out different things you want to put up online for content for online stuff, and then I leave a little bit earlier. So it's a nice mix right now, and right now it's a little early, but you get done early, which is a nice thing, and then right back when high school starts up, we'll start back getting that schedule.
So what you've been in that job for about a year now?
Close, it'll be a year in July, yeah.
So far, what is your favorite memory?
Well, I got thrown in the fire right away. And I think like the third day on the job, I went down to Mankato to Vikings training camp. That was a lot of fun. Being a Vikings fan myself growing up, getting down there, seeing Vikings players that you've watched, getting to talk also with some of the reporters that you've either listened to or you've read their stuff before, getting to interact with them was a lot of fun. Just kind of being in that atmosphere. That was one of the things that kind of stood out to me in terms of kind of the reporting and the journalistic side of it. Also, going down to Kinnick for the NDSU Iowa game was a lot of fun, because that's a stadium I've kind of gone to a couple of times, being that my dad's from Iowa. And so to be able to go to that stadium and see it from a bird's eye view, that was a lot of fun. And obviously when NDSU wins, it makes it even better. And then in terms of high school stuff, since I covered a lot of high school games, it's getting to see the cool events. So Cheyenne this year, a young school, hasn't had a lot of years under their belt yet. Their boys basketball team makes it to state for the first time in school history, because they had a buzzer beater 3 against their rival. I mean, stuff like that's kind of cool. So those are some of the memories, I guess.
Yeah, Vikings training camp, that's a pretty good first assignment.
Yeah.
Usually,
right off the bat,
when you're right off the bat, your first assignment's like, hey, rookie, why don't you go cover a preseason game, Pembina? It's about a 5-hour drive. But both of us, or all three of us, are KNDS alum. We've all worked at KNDS, you as well. What did being a KNDS sports director prepare you for going into the next chapter?
Well, I think it did a good job preparing me, just giving me experience, giving me time on a microphone. Because I spend a lot of time on a microphone right now, and it's kind of not perfecting stuff, but learning how you want to sound, what you like and what you don't like. So it's calling a game on KNDS, then going back and listening to it and being like, okay, I like that part of it, I didn't like that part of it, let's change that for next time, and just getting experience. You never know how many people are listening, because it's student media sometimes, and there's other stations out there that are a little bit bigger and people are going to listen to them, but it's getting a chance just to go on and perfect your craft a little bit and learn what it's like, because there's not really a ton of classes that are going to teach you hands-on what it's like. They're going to give you tests and textbooks and tell you how you should do it, but there's nothing like actually being on the microphone and having to figure out when you don't really have anything to talk about, trying to figure out something to talk about so there's not dead space, or trying to figure out how you got to memorize this kids' names for a basketball or football game so you don't pronounce it wrong in the meeting. So just getting the experience of doing it was something that I learned from KNDS that really helped me with where I am now. And I'm still learning a lot, but KNDS gave me that first opportunity.
Yeah, when you look back at your days at KNDS as the sports director, what are really the big moments that came up for you as the sports director, some of the big games you called, and how did that really prepare you for your job today?
I think some of the bigger games were like the national championships, or even the conference championships. So for football, going down to Frisco, and not just the game, but everything that went into it. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that goes into something like that, because you got to get the hotel, you got to figure out who's going down with you got to get the travel, you got to get credentials. It's stuff that has nothing to do with the content that the public's going to see or hear, but it's stuff that you've got to learn how to do it and how you're going to interact with the sports information directors, how you're going to interact with the guys that are going to set up interviews for you. So learning that stuff is really key, especially for the business, because it's networking. It's building good relationships with good people. So going down to Frisco taught me how to do that, especially. And then also the Summit League Championships for basketball. You get to schedule, again, hotels and stuff for basketball, and you have to schedule coaches for post-game or halftime interviews, those kind of things. So getting to learn that stuff from a bigger perspective on a national or a conference stage is kind of cool. So those are some of the bigger games, I'd say. And then in terms of things that KNDS just taught me good stuff was, getting to work with both of you guys and the rest of our sports crew, and just learning how to manage a team of people. And sometimes schedules don't work out perfectly, but finding a way just to get a time that meets for the most amount of people and is best for the team. And hopefully I did a decent job, and getting to do shows like this too. I remember doing shows at Herd and Horns last year for KNDS and for Ben, and getting a chance just to be here and interact and kind of get ourselves out in front of the local media or the local public out here and get a chance for them to see us. So everything's kind of come together. You guys have done a nice job keeping it alive, so nice job for you guys, but I like to think I kind of started it a little bit.
I know when people think about it, they think, well, maybe what did KNDS teach you how to do everything right? But how did KNDS help you when things went wrong? Because I know things have been going wrong a few times when 3 years that I've been calling games. I remember one time me and Brandon Brown, who's the current director of KNDS, we both showed up to the game thinking that we were both color commentator. And for people who don't know, as a color commentator, you don't really memorize the names. It's a different type of studying. So I had to memorize the names of all the players within 10 minutes, but we ended up putting the show together. So what is your experience with just putting a show together when things are pretty chaotic?
Well, that happens a lot of times. So, you're doing a game, and I remember sometimes with KNDS, I would show up and the equipment wouldn't work. So now you're in this flurry of, I've got to try and get this broadcast on, because the show's got to go on. That's the line. The show must go on somehow, and you got to be able to find a way to troubleshoot things and work with the equipment. Something I knew nothing about was working with equipment at all. So getting a chance kind of just to do that, and then again, like you said, learning names, learning things like that, because you're not always going to be perfect. I know there's been times, even at my job now, where I've messed things up, but then it's going back and looking at stuff and listening back to it and learning what you can do better.
Well, that ends our first half. We thank Andy for sharing his testimony as KNDS director and now on to AM Flag 1100. But when we come back, Andy's going to stick with us. We're going to talk some Dexter Pro Day, and we're going to get to the NBA as well, and don't forget March Madness. We'll see you after the break.
Founded in 1985, the Missouri Valley Football Conference has established a tradition of FCS football excellence. Competing at the highest level of NCAA Division I, student athletes at its 10 institutions demonstrate character, passion, and integrity as they grow as a student, an athlete, and a citizen. The Missouri Valley Football Conference, where leaders are shaped and champions are forged.
We got to get downtown to Sandy's Donuts so we can study for that chemistry test.
Yeah, let's get going, but I'm going to drive instead.
All right, man, I'm going to take the map bus. So what are you majoring in?
Sorry I'm late. It's been a crazy day.
welcome to the second half of X's and O's. We just got done with our break, but we're ready to talk some Bison Pro Day. And one of the names that you might be surprised by was NDSU basketball player Dexter Warner suiting up for Pro Day. He's trying to make it pro. What do you guys think about a basketball player trying to go now into the NFL? But we know what Dexter did in his high school days. He was an all-pro football player, also won a state championship with Bismarck High. How do you think he's going to transition?
He's an all-state tight end in high school, so he's got the tools and the ability, that's for sure. And he's always kind of been an undersized player for basketball, so he's got the athleticism to make up for a lack of size in basketball. So because he can jump, he's got good footwork, he's got good hands. So he's got some of the attributes, but it's a big jump. I mean, it's a completely different sport that he hasn't played for basically 4 years. Yeah. And honestly, it's been done before. You know, you list off the names, the Antonio Gates, the Jimmy Grahams of the world, but he's not the same level of athlete as those two guys are. So it's a long shot at best, but Dexter said it himself, so was his dad when I talked to him at the Pro Day. Hey, why not give it a shot? It can't hurt anything, so why not go out and just see what happens?
Yeah, you absolutely have to commend him for trying, because what do you lose by just going out there and giving a performance? Because nothing but good things can happen from this. And like you said, you talk about this has happened before. People like Antonio Gates, who's had a fantastic, borderline Hall of Fame career with the San Diego Chargers. Yeah, it's not impossible for someone to make that leap, but the one thing that I think Dexter has at a disadvantage is his height, because most of the guys who in this day and age are trying to make that transition from basketball to football are generally more like 6'9" or really big to go along with all that athleticism. And so it's just going to be one more thing that he's going to have working against him, but for trying, you absolutely have to commend him.
I know. I think his 40 time was about 4.8 to 4.9.
4.94.
It's pretty slow, but he is 6'6", and we know he can jump because people think he's not to be rude, but people look at him. You might think he's unathletic, but he throws down 360 dunks in warm-ups at basketball games.
He's got hops.
Kid can jump. So I don't know if he'll get in the draft, but I think maybe a team will look at bringing him onto camp, see if he can play.
Yeah, I highly doubt anyone's going to draft him. But like I said, go into camp, maybe someone prove yourself a little bit. And I know he said he's talked with a couple of agents, but that's been about it for him. And he probably won't talk to many teams, but maybe someone that was at that pro day, looking for Zach Johnson or was looking at Landon Leckler, saw Dexter's like, hey, it's happened before. Let's give this guy a chance, give him a shot, and see what happens. And anything can happen. So Dexter taking a shot at it, and he's got some attributes. You mentioned the speed's not really a great factor for him. He's not a great blocker just because he doesn't have the size that you think of a blocking tight end, but he has good hands. He can catch the ball and he can go up and get it too. So he's got some attributes to go with.
Yeah, and one more thing that he's got going for him is the fact that Carson Wentz has kind of put a spotlight on the NDSU program because of last year and the draft success that the Bison had. It's really going to play in his favor because more coaches and scouts are going to be looking in this direction, so he's got a much better chance of someone picking him out than he would have had in years past.
Yeah, both Carson and Dexter from Bismarck. So see if we can get those guys in the NFL. But Andy, you were at the Pro Day yesterday. We had a few other guys there like King Frazier, Jack Plankers, Zach Johnson. What did you see that other people that weren't there didn't see?
I saw Zach Johnson, who looks like that knee is healthy. It looks like it's finally healthy again after that MCL injury he had at the Senior Bowl, or as the East-West Shrine game. So it looks like he's healthy again, which is big for him, because he was someone that was probably going to get drafted. Now his draft stock's a little iffy if he'll get drafted or not. But it looks like he's healthy. He was able to run pretty well, good in all the position drills. Jack Plankers is a guy I think went over what he thought he was going to do in certain aspects, overachieved. But he's another guy that's probably going to be looking at an invite. Landon Leckler, I know, has got a couple of tryouts as well. He looked strong, like he'd been really working out a lot in the offseason. I know all these guys went to Dynasty Performers to work with, guys from past NDSU teams with Dudzik there at Dynasty Performance. So they've done a good job with them and with Dexter Warner, getting him ready just for the drill. So they're all pretty sound on the drills, so it's good to see those guys out there. King Frazier's an interesting one. You brought him up. He looked very fast in his 40 time. He's a guy, we were talking to him after the pro day. He's like, okay, at NDSU, this is me, in between the tackles. He wasn't Lance Stone and Bruce Anderson on the outsides. He was going to go between the tackles and be that power back. Now he's going to try to show scouts, hey, I'm fast, I got some speed. He can be that 3-down back, I'm not saying he'll get drafted, but he'll get some looks. I know he's got to try out with the Chiefs. I know I saw him talking with some Vikings personnel. They just lost Adrian Peterson, so maybe they're looking for someone in a later round or something like that. So he'll get a look. It'll be interesting to see about him because he's a good one. Also, Ben LeCompte was trying out again as a punter. And there's a lot of people watching that leg of Ben LeCompte take a lot of punts all the way into the end zone again.
I swear I've never seen a punter have more fun than him. When he'd
Seriously,
get those balls on the
blast.
1 yard line, he would just go crazy. But talking about King Frazier, not the statistics that we saw with Johnny Crockett, but then again, not the carries we saw with John Crockett. So that could be a
wasn't
plus or
splitting.
minus. King Frazier doesn't have that wear on his legs like John Crockett did with all those carries. But moving on from the Pro Day, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic. We're now in the Final Four in the NCAA tournament. We have Gonzaga, South Carolina, UNC, and Oregon. What are you guys thinking is going to go down tomorrow night?
Well, I know what I'm hoping for because North Carolina was my pick to win it all. So I just think it makes me look a little
conflict
better.
of interest,
yeah.
Jay.
If they try and win it, it'd make me look a little bit better because it's always even if you don't have a perfect bracket, which no one is going to. As long as you pick the winner, you can at least have a little bit of bragging rights. So I'm hoping North Carolina can take it all the way. However, I recognize that both of the games are going to be very interesting, especially the Oregon-North Carolina game, because we saw Oregon have a fantastic game against Kansas. They throttled them in the second half. And so when you look at that compared to the win North Carolina had against Kentucky, it was a much closer game. So you've got Oregon coming off a win against a better team in a bigger margin, and then you've got North Carolina who had a close win against a little bit of a lower level of competition. I mean, comparing Kansas to Kentucky, it's still pretty good, but you look at Kansas this year and what they've been able to do, it's a little bit of a different level this year. So that game, I think, is going to be very interesting to watch. South Carolina, Gonzaga, it's
not the sexy matchup.
It's no, absolutely not. And so it's a little bit more interesting to see what'll come of that. If Thornwell's going to be able to carry that South Carolina team to another victory, but Gonzaga's been playing incredibly solid basketball lately. But I really don't think either of the matchups are going to be bad, and it'll be very interesting to see what ends up happening.
So I think all the teams are pretty interesting, but if I'm looking at Gonzaga, I think their average player margin, the average play of all the players is about 23. They're an older team. They got a lot of seniors on the team, and they got 7'1", 300 pounds in the center, so it's really hard for other teams that aren't quite as big down low to combat with that. And then you have Oregon on the other side playing UNC tomorrow night. They just came off a huge win against Kansas. A lot of people thought Kansas was going to be the #1 team in this tournament, with older players and with younger players coming together to make a good team.
I got to get a quick plug out there. I did a podcast about this tournament back when it first started for AM 1100 The Flag with a couple of buddies of mine. It's out on Twitter right now if you want to see it, but we actually called a couple of the things. One of my buddies called Wisconsin beating Villanova. He said he thought that would happen. It did. And another one said Sindarius Thornwell is a name to watch out for. That's the name by the end of the tournament everyone's kind of going to be talking about. And obviously that's the big name for South Carolina. Everyone wants to talk about Sindarius Thornwell. I think he's a good player. I love the defensive intensity that South Carolina plays, but they just smother you. Even if they double team, they rotate so quickly, it's hard for any open looks. That's going to be really difficult for Gonzaga. They're going to have to knock down threes because South Carolina's going to clog the middle. They're not going to let Karnowski beat them inside. They're not going to let Nigel Williams-Goss drive into the lane as much. They're going to make them hit outside shots. If Gonzaga can, they'll move on. They will beat South Carolina if they can hit their shots. If they can't hit them outside, then South Carolina's going to really make it difficult on them on the interior to get any rebounds or good looks at the basket. UNC, by the way, also my pick to win the national championship, so well done. I like that pick. I have them going all the way. I love that game against Kentucky. That was an awesome game. I think they match up pretty well with Oregon. I really do. I think without Boucher down low for the Ducks, they lost him before the tournament started. They lack some size. Kennedy Meeks, Isaiah Hicks, are going to have a good time inside. I know Bell is a fantastic defender. We saw that against Kansas with 8 blocks. But one of them isn't enough. You've got to have a couple of guys down low that can battle against Hicks and Meeks. And Dylan Brooks is going to have to play down low on the block against either Meeks or Hicks. That's not going to bode well for Dan Altman and the squad. And also Roy Williams. That's got to be a factor at some point. He's the only coach with any Final Four experience. He's got to be able to have some help to his team where the other coaches just haven't been in this situation before.
In terms of fans and getting like a good television rating, I think the NCAA is hoping it's Gonzaga and UNC.
Definitely.
Or Oregon and South Carolina, so you're not too regional. So you don't have 2 Carolina teams and you don't have 2
Washington,
Oregon teams. So I think it's going to be a good Final Four. I mean, we do have 2 number ones. At least we have some big names in this tournament left. Obviously, UNC is a blue chip. You know, they've been around forever. They've been in a lot of Final Fours.
They're definitely the favorite at this point.
I think Roy Williams is definitely that X factor. I mean, a coach has been in a lot of big games.
It means a lot more to college than it does NBA, for sure, having that coach that has the experience that can really propel a team up, especially if they go on a bad stretch.
Well, we're out of time, and we want to thank Andy Rickoff for joining us. It's been a good one. You can listen to him on AM 1100 The Flag. Do you have a showtime you can tell us about?
Steve Sports Saturday, every Saturday. I'm one of the co-hosts of that one, so 9 to 11 every Saturday morning. Yeah.
9 to 11 Saturday mornings, you can listen to Andy. Also joined by my other host, Jay Lenander. You can catch us on Bin 484, and you guys can have a good week, and we'll be around later.